Well, it's all my fault, and due to an epic Venn diagram of work, illness, travel, and family obligations, this week has just been an absolute mess, and I have no time or energy left over to do a show this week. But never fear, we're going to rerun one of our favorite episodes from back in Season 4 titled What Makes Thai Culture Thai? Now, this comes from an old page on our site we titled Resources, which was updated exactly once and then nuked after a couple of years, but at least it yielded some good food for thought. Apologies for the missed week, but we'll be back to our regularly scheduled shenanigans next week. See you then. On this episode, we discuss the resources page on our website and dig into an article on Thai culture.
So if you're interested in hearing 5 of our insights into what makes Thai culture Thai, you'll love this episode of the Bangkok Podcast.
Happy New Year and welcome to the Bangkok Podcast. My name is Greg Jorgensen, a Canadian who came to Thailand in 2001 and is teaching his kid the dual skill of tapping trees for rubber and maple syrup.
And I'm Ed Knuth, an American who came to Thailand on a 1-year teaching contract 19 years ago. I've been waiting for Thailand to ban plastic bags, and they finally have. So I guess I can leave now.
All right. See you, man.
All right.
Good fun.
We want to say a quick thank you to one of our patrons, Tim Van Leeuwen, who supports us at the show Shadow Level. Stick around after we're done talking about the Bangkok Podcast resource page and our take on Thai culture to hear why Tim can join the official Bangkok Podcast Club of trying to look tough for your family, but actually being exposed as a wimp. And before we start, a huge thanks to all of our patrons who support the show. Patrons get a whole bunch of cool stuff, including our regular show a day early, behind-the-scenes photos and videos of our interviews, discounts on swag, which you can find on our website, and various other things that aren't available to regular listeners. But best of all, patrons also get an unscripted, uncensored bonus episode every week where we riff on current events and random topics. We just finished recording this week's bonus show, and we chatted about our New Year's Eves, Greg's trip to Khao Yai to teach us on how to roast marshmallows, and Thailand's welcome, but sudden and somewhat unexpected, ban on plastic bags. To become a patron, head to bangkokpodcast.com/support.
Yeah, I'm still a bit shocked that both of us missed that plastic bag thing coming.
I'm embarrassed. Dude, we got to get our shit together. We're supposed to be experts on this. I had no idea what was going on.
Maybe we're reading the wrong websites or something. All right, on this episode, we look a little bit inward to discuss the concept and content of the resources page on the Bangkok Podcast website. Now, if you don't know, we created a page, unsurprisingly, called Resources as an additional platform where we can discuss topics and ideas that we don't have the room or the time to stick in a traditional podcast episode. Now, I wrote a quick article a few weeks ago, but it's Ed's insightful most recent post that got a lot of attention, and it's called Some Thoughts on Thai Culture. So we got a bit of feedback from it, and we have a few additional thoughts, so we thought it might be fun to use that post as a springboard and take the discussion a little bit further to talk about our thoughts on Thai culture and what the resources page is trying to do and why we created it. So what do you think about that, Ed?
The idea of the resources is to just have a kind of text-based permanent thing. If you're not in the mood to listen to a show but you want some information, you can hit the resources. Plus, there are certain things that we just, we don't have time to keep doing shows on. There might be some important issue, but the bottom line is it's some fixed thing. Like Thai culture is not going to change every couple months. So we just decided to create a page where we gave our take on Thai culture as kind of a summary. And of course, we talk about it on the podcast, but we just figured there'd be it would be helpful for you to have like a quick summary to read about it. So please check it out. Check it out. To be honest, another reason why I wanted to do the show is I was really curious about feedback, both from foreigners but also Thai people.
Yeah, well, I mean, you did a really good job on this blog. Like, I read it, and I have really nothing to add. I mean, it's really insightful and really good.
Damn, you're useless, dude. You are useless.
I know, what do you sound like my wife. But, and, you know, obviously between the two of us, you are the thinker because you're the professor, and I'm the lover because I have a child. So obviously you've put a lot more thought into this than I have. But I thought it was really good. But since you wrote it, you've had some additional thoughts, and you've also talked to some Thai people about it as well. So
that's right.
I thought that was really cool.
Yeah. So basically, the idea was I wanted to create a page to summarize Thai culture for expats and also potentially tourists. So the idea would be if you're coming to visit Thailand on a holiday, or if you're coming to live here, you might appreciate a quick summary of Thai culture. Of course, it's just a summary. And if you read the resources page, I make clear that it's these are just generalizations we're talking about. It doesn't apply to all Thai people. Thai people are not all the same. And I don't want to rehash everything that's in the kind of blog post or the resource page.
Right.
But the basic idea is I think culture is a real thing. In other words, it's like if you spend some time in Thailand and spend some time in Japan and spend some time in Sweden and spend some time in Brazil, it ain't the same.
That's a fair assessment, I think.
Are you with me? It ain't the same.
Yeah. Yeah.
The bottom line is that culture is a real thing. It can be hard to define or put your finger on, and it's also somewhat dangerous territory because I think when you start trying to define culture, it can lead to like stereotyping, which I think is a bad thing. So, you know, I think it's okay to kind of generalize and say something like, hey, Thai people like spicy food. I think that's okay. I think to meet an individual, real Thai person and assume they like spicy food, I think that's not cool. I think the bottom line is individuals are always individuals, but I think in general, I don't think cultures are the same.
No, I agree. And don't challenge me on spicy food. I mean, just because I'm a white guy doesn't mean I don't like spicy food. I've got some bread in the kitchen. I'll go and eat it right now. I don't care.
Dude, you're daring. With bread, you really take risks with your bread.
That's right.
Well, yeah. I can say that I am a white guy who likes spicy food, and I can pretty much handle real Thai spice. I mean, occasionally it's too much, but the bottom line is I am a white guy who likes spicy food.
I am a white guy who does not. I am a chicken when it comes to spicy food. When I'm eating spicy chicken, I am a chicken.
I was going to say in class, sometimes I talk about this kind of stuff, and I actually use the spicy food thing as an example because I think it's a good one. And so I will just ask a group of students, how many of you do not like spicy food? And it's, you know, essentially all my students are Thai, and usually it's about 20 to 30%. So about, you know, anywhere between 1/5 and 1/3 of students will raise their hands and say they don't like spicy food. So, you know, the bottom line is like, okay, in general, on average, Thai people like spicy food, but like a significant minority do not.
Yeah, but there's probably some data thrown off that sample size there because, I mean, a Thai sometimes my wife gives me some food and she's like, it's not spicy, and I eat it and my face explodes. So,
right.
I mean, it's pretty
well,
subjective.
That is always a factor. But anyway, let's jump into the characteristics that I came up with. So the basic idea of this resource page or blog post was I wanted to come up with the top 5 characteristics of Thai culture. And especially coming from Greg and I's perspective, we're both Westerners. What are the 5 things that kind of quickly would define Thai culture? So let's just run through them, Greg, and we can maybe quickly discuss them. So the first thing that I listed, and this is, although I have the top 5 are not really in order. It's just whatever, 5 things. So the first one I listed is respect for authority. And I think that in general, Thai people just tend to respect people in authority more than we do, more than Westerners. So I think parents, teachers, religious figures, monks, government officials, in general, Thai people, I think, just have more respect for authority. It's just my take. I mean, would you concur just on average in general?
I would concur. I mean, we can dither back and forth on what authority means, whether it's age or money or, rank or all 3 or none of the above, but I think, in Western culture, we're generally taught that there is a value in challenging authority.
Right.
You know better than me. We're on the same playing field, and I can be just as good as you. I can be better than you.
Yeah. I think I think I have actually mentioned this story on the podcast before, but I'll tell it very quickly. I was in Thailand teaching for probably 7 or 8 years, and my Thai students were just generally so nice to me, just respectful. Basically, they're just respectful. And then out of the blue, I happened to teach a class of all American students.
Okay.
And I just I'd been out of my country for a long time. I hadn't taught Americans in a while. And I thought these young American kids were so goddamn rude. It's like, I was just like, what is wrong with these people? It's like, they're so like impertinent. They're so obnoxious, and it's interesting. It took me a while to kind of readjust, but I realized that at least I think the bottom line is the way I process this whole thing is that for my Thai students, when I walk into the room and I'm the Ajahn,
right?
They just accept that. They're like, all right, he's the Ajahn. Like, that's his position, that's his status.
Yeah.
So let's listen to what he's got to say and take notes. And they're not testing the position I'm in. They're like, they just accept, okay, that guy is the Ajahn.
Right.
But when I had these American students, at least the way I process it is they're checking. They're like, who is this guy? He's supposed to be the teacher, but like, and they were really pushing and questioning and giving me shit and doubting me. And it was like, my position wasn't enough to establish authority. I had to earn it.
Yeah.
It's funny because they didn't start. This could turn into a long story, so I'm going to keep it short. To be honest, these American students didn't start respecting me until I started putting them down. Until I started embarrassing. The bottom line is I just started to embarrass them with all the shit that they didn't know.
Right.
Like, I just show them.
Roasting them.
Yeah, I just show them what I knew.
That's funny.
And I had to kind of put them in their place, and then they're like, oh, shit, this guy knows his stuff.
Yeah, I think we can sum it up by basically it's an insight that I had years ago, and it's in Thailand and many Asian cultures as well. Respect is given based on a certain status of something.
Yes.
Whereas in the West, respect needs to be earned.
That's right. I mean, I think you get a little bit of, if you're in a position of status in the West, you get a little bit of, assumption of ability, but you still got to prove yourself. Like, you can't cruise on your position or status.
Right. Like if you're talking to a celebrity or something, like, wow, that guy's famous. But you could very easily say, like, so he went to public school. I went to public school. Who cares?
Yeah, right.
Okay. So that was a good one. That was a good one.
Okay. Respect for authority. Okay. The second, quite famous, and again, these are not in any order. I think we can agree that Thai culture is pretty damn indirect in most cases. In other words, Thai people in general, they actually, I think, don't like to or fear insulting other people or stepping on other people's toes. And that leads them to, I think, rarely criticize other people openly or directly.
I would agree. There is one important caveat here, though, is because what is insulting to foreigners is often not insulting to Thai people.
Or at least sometimes.
At least sometimes.
Okay. Yeah.
The example I always use is when I first came to Thailand, and I'd been here for like 3 months, and I got a job teaching at this high school, and I was being led around on my first day, being introduced to all the teachers, and this was in like November. So they're walking me around, and almost every teacher I saw was like, "Oh, hello, Greg, nice to meet you. Welcome to the school. Hey, you could be Santa this year because you're fat." Right. And I was like, what the hell? I'm green, right? And everybody, like, I have no idea what's going on. And the first people I'm meeting, they're calling me fat. I was like, I just start punching some faces here. But,
that's great.
To them, this wasn't offensive or rude in the least. It was just a statement of fact.
Okay. So, Greg, I think you've made a very good point here. And I think the point is that in general, Thai people are less direct. I think so. In general, that's true. But it's kind of weird because there are these kind of cultural exceptions you could almost carve out. And so you've made a good point about weight and I think general appearance. Like, it's kind of odd, but Thai people tend to be fairly direct about just appearance. It's like they tend to be straightforward. Like, if you look fat or too skinny. Like they're direct. But the other thing they're pretty direct about is age. Whereas again, this is a cliche. You can read about this in any guidebook, but Thai people, this has to do with their respect for authority. A lot of the way they gauge authority is based on age. So that means they need to know how old you are in order to know how to talk to you. And that means that they often, not always, it depends on the situation, but more likely than Westerners would, a Thai person will just ask you how old you are.
Right. Unless you get to my age, or probably presumably your age, because now people look at me and they're like, he's definitely older than I am. There's no question.
No, the bottom line is you're always meeting people. You're always, obviously we meet people our age too. But,
you're right.
I would say this. In the West, I don't know, man. I feel like other than with children, you would never ask a woman her age. Like you just don't do it.
It'd be like asking someone how much they make. Like,
anything over, any girl, I would say, over 12, over 13, 14. Like it's just, especially with women, it's just like you just don't ask how old they are. But a little bit of a warning to our listeners: if you are a woman, you come to Thailand, someone might ask directly how old you are, or to be honest, they might tell you you're fat. They might
ask you how old you are and then tell you you're fat. It's just brutal. You got to get real, yo. You gotta get your ego up to bulletproof status when you move to Thailand.
So this is, in a way, this is ironic because it's definitely true that Thai people are indirect about 998 things.
Right.
But then there's a couple things. There might be a few others out there. It's not necessarily only these two things, but it's so odd. It's kind of odd that just in a few things they're just more direct.
Yeah, and I know there's all kind of nuance with this stuff.
Okay, so the third thing I mentioned is this idea of high context versus low context culture. This is, I think, a fascinating thing, but it there's not too much we can say about it. But the basic idea is that in general, Asian culture, including Thai culture, is considered high context, which means that Thai people in general get a lot of information from the situation they're in, and they don't expect everything to be spelled out to them. They don't only get information verbally. But Western culture is famously verbal, which means if someone doesn't say something, we don't take it as solid or real. So in other words, Western culture is kind of legalistic. Like if you don't say something directly, it's not necessarily solid. And I got to tell you, this has affected a lot of my relationships with Thai people, both at work and in my personal life, where it's like I get into a disagreement like with my wife or with my boss, and I will always be saying like, "You didn't tell me that. Like you didn't say that."
Right.
And it's like I just expect that I only need to live up to what has been told to me.
Yeah, this is really interesting. And before I read this that you wrote, I had never thought of things as high context or low context situations. And the thing that first came to my mind is that my wife is famously, for me anyway, known of asking for things without actually asking for them. Like she'll say like, "Oh man, my legs are sore." And that's a clear indication that I need to massage her legs. But she's like, "Why don't you massage my legs?" I'm like, "Well, if you want me to massage your legs, ask me to massage your legs." Like,
right.
Don't throw out all these random hints. And she's like, "It couldn't have been clearer," So
yeah, this is great. I mean, it's just I like this particular characteristic because it shows you that I grew up in the West, and so I think like a Westerner, and I like Western culture. I like Western culture, but right. Living here for a long time, I've really learned to appreciate the Thai perspective. I mean, I still am Western, and I prefer the way I grew up. But I think from a Thai perspective, well, let me put it this way: everyone understands the idea that you can kind of ruin something by talking about it too much or being too clear. And I think that's the Asian take on Western culture. It's just like we ruin stuff by having to spell everything out. In a way, it's kind of lame to spell everything out. You know what I mean?
I could see that. Yeah, like it eliminates some of the mystery, some of the romance, some of the nuance.
Yeah, So I kind of appreciate Asian culture a little bit more. That there's a lot more stuff that's left unsaid, and I grasp it more. I understand it more than I would have, until I lived here for 20 years.
Till my wife started yelling at me again that her legs are sore. Oh yeah.
All right, number 4.
Earlier.
Number 4 was fitting in. This is pretty straightforward. I think, especially in public, Thai people in general want to fit in. I think it's generally a more conformist culture. It's group oriented. In general, I think Thai people don't want to stand out as individuals. Now, again, this is a generalization. There's always exceptions. And I make the point on the blog that I think Thai people are very unique, but the bottom line is they don't flash or show their differences. Whereas I think in Western culture, everyone, people practically wear T-shirts that say "I'm different."
Right.
It's like they're projecting that. Whereas I think in Asian culture and Thai culture, people wear T-shirts to say, "I'm the same. I'm like everybody else."
One of the most successful advertising slogans from the past 50 years has been Apple's "Think different."
Right.
Think different, be different.
Right, but I think that, I think for Thai people, they don't want to show that. Like, that's not what they want to show. They might actually be different, but just in general, in public, that's not what they're projecting. Does that make sense?
Right. Yeah. It causes waves. It doesn't earn you any points. Like, why are you trying to be different? What's the value in that? Why don't you just be like everyone else?
That's right. And I can see this among my students. So now I'm 19 years into teaching almost exclusively Thai students. And the bottom line is most of my students kind of look the same, dress the same, talk the same, think the same. I mean, there's definitely some highly unusual students I've had. But if you could somehow score diversity or rate diversity, it's just the way my students project themselves. They're far less diverse than in the States. It's just like if I took a picture of one of my classes, you would just be like, wait a minute. Like, are they
Did
all
you Photoshop
related?
the same 5 kids?
But as I get to know them, like, they are individuals, of course. Like, human beings are in fact individuals. Like, it's just a question of culturally how you express it. And I think that Thai people are taught to fit in. And let me throw this out there. I got an interesting quick story from one of our listeners who I think this is a good, just a very good example of this. He put out a cake, I believe at some kind of party or office kind of party. He put out a cake for everyone to share.
All right. Yeah.
Right.
Yeah.
And it just sat there. So no one was eating the cake.
Okay.
So he was like, oh, I guess I got to break the ice or break the cake. So he went out and he ate the first piece. And then as soon as he did that, everyone else came up and started to eat the cake. And then until there's one piece left. And then no one ate it and just left it sitting there.
Oh, well, that's funny.
You know what I mean? But it's in a way it's perfect because it's like, I think Thai people will be conscious. They'll be conscious of, I don't want to be the first person to take it. I'm going to wait for someone else to go. Then I'll go.
Yeah. And I think in Thai culture, even if you do take steps to stand out or be different or push the limits a little bit, you're often smacked down and told, stop that. And I've said this story again on the show before, but when I was teaching in high school, there are strict dress codes and appearance rules and stuff like this. And one of the girls in one of my classes cut her hair too short.
Oh, right. Yes. I remember this.
So they made her wear a wig at school.
So crazy.
She looked like Joan Jett. It was ridiculous.
That's kind of cool. I like Joan Jett. That's kind of cool.
I love Joan Jett. She was my first rock and roll crush. But I mean, come on.
That's a literal. That is a literal example of fitting in.
Yeah, exactly. So that was an interesting one as well.
All right. So the fifth, also quite famous characteristic of Thai culture is what I'd list as no problems, which is just the Mai Pen Rai attitude. Thai people like to always act as if everything's okay. It's just a Thai. It's a Thai thing to say, "My pen Ryan, no problem. Everything's cool." Obviously, this is the land of smiles. Thai people love to smile and say, "Everything is fine.
It's fine.
Nothing's wrong.
My pen Ryan.
Nothing's wrong. Nothing's wrong." And it's funny. I was trying to think of, part of the reason why we wanted to do this on the podcast is to talk about exceptions. I don't know if I know an exception to this one. I mean, obviously, sometimes there are just obvious problems, like your house is burning down and you have to leave, So Thai people are not going to lie in their bed and burn to death and say, "Hey, nothing's wrong." Okay. They're not going to do that. Like, if the house is burning down, Thai people are going to scream and run. So they do not always say there are no problems. But the bottom line is this is a pretty straightforward thing. I mean, would you agree?
Yeah, I think so. I think it's again, it sort of relates to the whole concept of making waves. Like, just don't make waves. Just let everything be normal. And it kind of parallels to me the fact that I was talking to my friend who runs a tour company, and we were talking about how the client must never know what goes on behind the scenes. The client must always see perfectness, no problems. It doesn't matter if the tuk-tuk driver that's supposed to pick you up in 30 seconds isn't showing up. You've got 15 people in the next room scrambling, sweating to make that happen or to find an alternate form of transport. But the client can never know that. The client can't see that. You always have to project this sort of like, yeah, everything's cool. Don't worry about it. Even though it might not be. But I think there's real value seen in just making everything look sabai.
Now, so the only thing I could think of, a buddy of mine who ran a business in Thailand and had a lot of Thai employees, he said something to me once that I liked. He said, "You can say anything you want to a Thai person as long as you're smiling."
So I'd like to test that out.
So what he meant is that it's okay to criticize Thai people. It's more how you say it. It's like it's like the content can be negative or harsh, but if you're kind of nice about it, then everything's cool. But I don't know. I would say there's probably 3 exceptions where Thai people are not going to say "My pen Rai."
What's that?
The first is going to be insults to the monarchy.
Yeah,
they're not going to let that. They're not going to let that slide.
Nope.
I would say insults to Buddhism or direct insults to like a Buddha figure. They're not going to let that slide.
Yeah.
And then if you were harsh, like direct insults to Thai people in general. Or Thailand in general. The bottom line is Thai people, I think, are pretty easygoing. Like, Thai people often criticize Thai people in general. Like, I've heard Thai people say negative things about Thai people, but I think they're more sensitive to farangs in general. Just
I agree.
ripping on Thai people. It's not cool.
Yeah. And just to close this one off, this is the whole thing of no problems, the My Pen Lai thing, just how deeply ingrained it is. It came back to me this morning as I was driving back from Khao Yai, and the song from The Lion King came on, Hakuna Matata, right? And my son was listening to it, and he knows the song sort of. But he asked me, he's like, "Daddy, what does Hakuna Matata mean?" And I went, and it's in the song, Hakuna Matata means no worries till the end of your days. But he doesn't know the phrase no worries. But he does know My Pen Lai. He said, what does Hakuna Matata mean? I said, "It means My Pen Lai." And he's like, "Oh, okay." Like, he totally got it. 5 years old, he totally got it.
Well, so, he is Thai Canadian, dude. He is maple syrup and rubber wrapped in one.
That's right. So from an early age, they get it. That's it's either taught or osmosized into them that everything has to be no worries,
right?
No problems.
I actually had a 6th thing which I was considering for the resource page, but I was kind of obsessed with this idea of the top 5 characteristics. So I have an honorable mention. The sixth characteristic of Thai culture, which I think is different than in the West, which is pretty straightforward. It's just basically this desire to appear proper in public. The bottom line is, I think Thai people are just more conservative in public. I think in private, they can be relaxed and in some ways more liberal, maybe in other ways more conservative. In private, I feel like, to be honest, I feel like in private, Thai people are more like Westerners. But in public, in general, I would say they're more conservative. Wouldn't you agree? I mean, remember that whole debacle of like during Songkran that two girls took their tops off in public? And it was like a nationwide thing. Like two girls took their tops off. And it was a nationwide story.
It was a scandal. This is not Thai. Until someone pointed out the Ministry of Culture had a Thai painting on its front page with two topless women on it.
Right. But it's just story. Like, just in public, Thai people like to appear conservative.
Yeah, I think so. And I think this speaks a little bit to the fact that it's a Buddhist country, and Buddhism is very much of you do your thing and I'll do my thing.
In private.
Exactly. Yes. Like, in private, you do your thing. Like, you're Buddhist, great. Yeah, it's not my business. Whatever you want to do is fine. Whereas I think from Western cultures where they're sort of more Judeo-Christian, it's like, these are the rules we all must abide by inside and outside your house.
Right. That's right.
In Buddhism, it's like, you do your own thing. It's none of my business. I don't care. Once you're at home, it's none of my business what you do.
Yeah, I mean, it's a cool little philosophy/cultural intersection, because I think that in the West we're just more guilt based, because Western culture is based on this idea of God, and God knows everything. So it doesn't matter whether you do something in public or do something in private. Nothing is private because God's always watching.
Don't forget Santa.
Yeah, that's right. He's always watching too. And the Tooth Fairy.
Yeah. Right. But Jesus, we got a whole bunch of deities checking in on us all 24 hours a day.
Yeah, but I think Thai culture and a lot of Asian culture, without that God that knows everything, I think they're more social. It's a more social culture where they care more about what other people think. It's a more shame-based thing, which means in private, as long as no one else knows what's going on, they're more chilled out and relaxed. So I think in private, Thai people are not particularly conservative. I'm not saying they're wild. I don't think they're wild either. I just feel like in private, Thai people are kind of normal. But in public, or when they see other people are watching, I think they're definitely more conservative than Westerners on average.
There's a greater effort made to fit in, and
and look proper, just to appear proper. Yeah,
that's a good insight, man. Yeah.
Well, that's an honorable mention. So that's for all of you guys listening. But please check out the resource page if you can, and any feedback you have, we'd really appreciate. Whether you're foreign or Thai, we really want your feedback, because we can then improve the page and change it. It's not fixed. I can edit it. I can change it. So please give us your feedback.
Yeah, and we promise to put a little bit more work into this. We'll post semi-regularly on the resources page. We don't want to make a whole bunch of new work for ourselves, but it's a cool place that we can put up some videos or links or who knows what else, and we'll keep working on it. So we'd love to hear your feedback. If you have any, let us know. All right. Let's get into some love, loathe, or live with, where one of us picks a particular aspect of life in Bangkok, which we then discuss and decide if it's something we love about living here, loathe about living here, or have come to accept as something that we have to learn to live with, no matter how we feel about it. And this week, it is my turn. And again, I am drawing on my trip to Khao Yai this past weekend. And Ed, I'm going to ask you this because I know you're a music guy. But what are your thoughts on when you go to a place to see your friends and it is a dining venue? You're eating food, you're chatting.
Okay.
And suddenly, somehow, it turns into a live music venue.
Oh, geez. Right.
Usually, this means that the music is going to be played way too loud to be talking. So you end up just sitting there by yourself, staring at the band playing usually cheesy 80s cover music or something like that. So basically, what do you think of this when your dinner place gets turned into a live music place?
Well, obviously, this is an easy one. I mean, you got to loathe this. This has come up before on the podcast. It's one of the weird things about Thai culture where they're not as volume sensitive. It's like it's not even just like live bands. It's like random women running a tiny shop will have like a blaring music that's
Right.
that's way too loud. You're walking
Right.
through you're walking through a market, and
Right.
just a random 68-year-old woman like selling trinkets will have a blaring radio.
Right.
It just makes no sense. But the same thing is true of live music. Live music in Thailand tends to be way too loud. And again, it really does depend on the venue. Like if you're in a heavy metal club, okay, loudness is appropriate. But what
Right.
Greg is talking about is like you're at a dinner venue. You're at it. So the primary function of the place is to eat and hang out.
Exactly.
And then they'll have a live band that is way too loud. So this is definitely a loathe. It's a general problem all across Thailand. I don't get it. I've never understood it. Thai people, again, it contradicts our characteristics of Thai culture. Thai people are so indirect. Thai people are so nice. Thai people are so concerned. They're so concerned about stepping on other people's toes.
I hate it too. I loathe it.
Except when it comes to music, it's like the music is too loud. And
I think,
listeners, I know some of you listeners out there, you're going to be going, Ed and Greg are just getting old. They're just two old guys complaining about how loud things are.
yeah.
Go ahead.
Yeah.
I mean, you can believe that all you want. Come to Thailand. Check it out. Okay, I'm telling you, it's too loud.
I think the general thought is that there is no venue that can't be improved by a loud live music set.
That's what they think. No, that is what Thai people think, yeah.
Yeah. And I mean, if I go to see music, I want to see music, and I'm all about it being loud. Sure. But if I go to sit down at a restaurant and chat with my friends, I want to chat with my friends. I don't want to sit there and stare at a band that's too loud, so I have to stop chatting with my friends. Anyway, that's
Definitely a loathe.
heavy loathe.
Yeah, I'm with you 100%. It's a Thai problem. Okay, I'm not saying it's as big as like plastic bags. I'm not saying it's as big as the air pollution, but noise pollution, it's on the list, man. It's on the list.
Right on. Right.
All right. So as we mentioned at the beginning of the show, we'd like to say thank you to Tim Van Leeuwen for lending us his support at the show Shadow Level. And Greg, what did you find out about Tim?
Well, I had a couple of very nice back and forths with our buddy Tim, and he had a funny story about a trip he took to Koh Chang with his wife. And I'm going to quickly recount his story here. He said, while on holiday to Koh Chang, my wife took me to a treetop adventure park. You know, those parks where you get on zip lines and you go between these trees, tens or dozens of meters above the ground. And some of his wife's friends, and they went there, and they had a lot of fun. But I'd never told my wife that I had a small fear of heights. And I thought to myself, maybe this is not such a good idea. So we arrived at the park, and the first thing I saw was a person flying past on a very long and high zip line between some trees. He said, at that moment, I knew I was in for a rough day. So long story short, he got stuck up in a tree on a very small platform, just big enough for one person. And he had to grab a rope and then jump off the platform and swing like Tarzan, but he froze. And behind me on the next platform was his wife and a group of other people waiting for him to jump. They started cheering me on, and I felt very silly at that moment, but I finally got hold of myself and jumped and landed safely. As you can imagine, she still makes fun of me once in a while of how I was standing there scared on the platform. And Tim, I got to say, I feel your pain, man, because I think, like we said at the top of the show, we need to form a little club, the Bangkok Podcast, like Brave Chicken Club or something like that, because I have a kid and we take our kid to these fun parks sometimes. And a couple of weeks ago, we were out at Dream World, which is like this sort of Thai version of Disneyland north of Bangkok. And my wife is always like, no, I don't want to go on the rides. And I'm always like, yeah, no problem. I can go on the rides. I'll go on the rides with the kid. It's fun. And he's only 5, so he can't go on the big rides. So we went on this little bus ride that sort of went, it's hard to explain, but it's like, imagine this bus attached to a giant spinning circle disc. So it goes about 15 feet off the ground and just sort of spins around. And it was the lamest, slowest, kiddiest ride around. And I was on with my kid and he was having a good time. But dude, I got off that thing and I was sick. I was nearly sick. Yeah. I mean, I didn't puke or anything, but I was feeling queasy.
Damn.
I thought back to the days when I would go on these like slingshot rides and be flipped upside down and sideways and stuff, and it never bothered me. But these days, just like you, Tim, I got to act tough in front of my wife. Like, oh, I'll go on all these rides, no problem. But in reality, it's not such a cool little adventure for me anymore. But I can't let that facade break.
That's
I gotta
right.
make sure my wife thinks I'm the stud that can go on any ride with my fearless son.
Thankfully, your wife does not listen to the Bangkok podcast.
That's right. She gets enough of my blathering at home, so she doesn't need any more extra in her ears on the BTS. Well, thanks for your support, Tim. That was a pretty funny story, and at least you're honest with your wife now. I mean, she knows you're scared of heights, so you don't have to pretend to be a big tough guy. You can proudly be a Bangkok podcast branded wimp and join me in the kitty line for the rides at Dreamworld.
All right, thanks, Tim. A final thanks to all of our patrons who help keep the show ad-free. Patrons get a ton of cool perks and the warm, fuzzy feeling knowing that they're helping support the show. Find out more by clicking support on our website. And connect with us online. We're Bangkok Podcast on social media, bangkokpodcast.com on the web, or simply bangkokpodcast@gmail.com. We love hearing from our listeners, and we always reply to our messages.
Yeah, you can also listen to each episode on YouTube. You can chat with us online, or even reach out to me directly on Twitter, where I am BKK Greg. So thank you for listening, everyone. Happy New Year, and we'll see you back here next week.
Yep, see you next week.
So thank you for listening, everyone. Happy New Year, and we'll see you back here next week.
Yep, sirree.
You say yep, sirree?
Yeah, okay. Maybe that won't work. Yes, we'll see you. Yeah, we'll see you next week. Thank you for listening. Yep, see you next week.
There we go.
I'll go with that.